If stacking your astrophotos in Siril feels complicated, then this video and the script that I'm about to talk about is for you. This script has been around for a while, and the current version is version 2.0.6. And in this video, I'm going to reintroduce the script to you. And this time I'll go over everything in the script from top to bottom instead of just covering what changes has happened, since it's been a long time since I've done a full run through of the entire script. But I will mention that this script now supports 10 smart telescopes. The newest one that was added is the Seestar S30 Pro, and we'll be processing the Horsehead Nebula from that telescope in this video. So now let's dive into the demo. But before we get started with adding the script and running it, I just want to say that we should first make sure that your home directory is set correctly. And to do that, you click on the home button on the top left hand side, also known as the working directory, and you want to make sure you navigate to wherever your folder is, and you have at least the lights directory. In my lights directory, I have a whole bunch of FITS files from the Seestar S30 Pro. If you have calibration frames such as darks, biases, and flats, you can include them here, create those folders, and put your respective files in there. Click on cancel because I already have the working directory set. Looking at the folder structure once more, if you have biases, flats, and darks, and you create a folder and you want to include master calibration frames, you just include the master frames in that specific folder. As long as there's just one of that FITS file or FIT file in that directory, the script will treat it as a master frame. All right, so now once we have our directory set up, if you don't already have the script installed, you would go to scripts, get scripts, and on the search here, you want to search for Naztronomy. There are two scripts here. The one we'll be demoing today is an Naztronomy Smart Telescope pp.py. Make sure you check the box and then you click on apply. Now once you apply, it will install the script for you. The first time it runs, it could take a couple of minutes depending on your connection. Once you have the script to run it, you go to scripts, Python scripts, pre-processing, and it will be the Naztronomy Smart Telescope pp.py. If you have the script not under pre-processing, that means you may have a beta version of the script. So if you want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date production version that is fully supported, this is what you need. So let's click on this. And then once you open it, this is the user interface. Let's go over the UI from top to bottom. So on the top here, we have the version number. So this one is version 2.0.6. This is the latest version that has quite a few new features and quite a few new improvements. Right under it, we have the title of the script and then your current working directory. So if this looks off, you want to close this out and then change your working directory by clicking on the home button right here. Under the local Gaia catalog status, it gives you statuses of your local Gaia catalogs. There's two. There's the astrometry Gaia catalog, which is required for plate solving, which is then required for automatic mosaicing. If you don't have this, it will still run, but it'll crop down to your reference frame. So the result will look more like the picture on the right where it cropped down to a single reference frame instead of this where it looks a little bit weird, but once you have a mosaic, it'll start to make even more sense, and you'll want the extra stuff out here so that you can crop down by yourself. So if there was some nebulosity here, it wouldn't be available on this right side here because it would be right outside of the screen. So if the script can plate solve and mosaic your images together, then you'll get something that will give you a lot more control once you're post-processing. Now, if you don't have this set up, it'll still run. It could attempt to connect to online Gaia, but that goes on and off, so you may have issues doing mosaics. And if it is on, if you hover over this, it'll tell you exactly where that .dat file is. And then there's the photometry Gaia. So now this, as of about a month or so ago, is no longer required to be local. The Siril devs have added another location where you can use online Gaia or their version of the online Gaia to do photometry. So if this is not green, it's okay. Your thing will still do SPCC if it can connect to the internet and connect to that online database. But if it is green, it'll also tell you where that file is. Now to the telescope section. Under the drop-down, happy to say that we have 10 smart telescopes that are being supported now. The S30, S30 Pro, S50, the Dwarf Mini 3 and 2, the Celestron Origin, and 3 Unus telescopes, the Evscope 1, 2, and Odyssey. These all have been tested and are fully supported. The telescope selection is mostly required for SPCC, but every telescope including and below the Dwarf 2, is required for other additional activities that happen within the script to make those telescopes compatible. Now we have the calibration frame section. So there's three types: darks, flats, and biases. If you check these boxes and you don't have that folder created, such as like here, since I don't have darks, the script is smart enough to know that you may have clicked it by mistake and it'll just ignore the checkbox. But if you do have it, as I mentioned before, if you have just one frame in that folder, like one dark.fit file, it'll treat it as a master frame. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you have multiple darks, flats, and biases, it'll actually create master frames for you and then store them for you in a separate folder. But since I don't have these, I will uncheck these. If you use dark flats instead of biases, you check biases and you put them in the biases directory. Now, one cool thing that my script does is it cleans up files. So one of the biggest complaints that people have about serial processing is that it creates a lot of intermediary files that can take up a lot of space, especially when you're drizzling. So when you click clean up files, it'll actually delete the intermediary files as the script goes. So it'll save a ton of space. The next option here is use compression. So this is an option. You can use compression and Siril will compress your files, which will save a ton of space during processing. Not only that, from my testing, if you look at my video on version 2.0.4, I believe, compression actually saved a lot of time when processing as well. So this is, I think, worth experimenting. And for those of you asking whether you'll lose data using this, I believe the only data that you'll really lose is noise. So using this, you could end up with cleaner data. Now, if you hover over this, it gives you a little tooltip. It says that if for some reason the script crashes or Siril crashes or you cancel the run, compression may remain on in your Siril settings. So what happens is that the script will turn on compression as it runs and then turn it off. And that setting is, you go to Preferences, under Fits Options, it'll be Fits Compression None. When the script runs, it'll actually automatically change it to enabled with the method rice. And if you cancel the script or something crashes, this will not turn off, because turning it off is one of the last steps that the script does. So if you notice that your Siril is creating fit.fz files, come back here and then click it to none. But if the script is allowed to finish, then it'll turn off compression automatically. The next thing we have here is the max files per batch. This is to help people on Windows go past the 2048 file limit. It will batch automatically if you have more than the batch file count here. I only have 313, so it's not going to be of much use here for me. But what I can do is I can actually set this to like 100, and what this will do is it'll split my batches into essentially 4, because you'd have to divide. Once you divide 313 by 100, you get 3.13, and you'll get batches of 100 3 times and a batch of 13 once. So you can play around with this and see what you get. I just want to pause here and say that as soon as I was done recording this demo, Siril introduced the version 1.4.2, which now has an experimental version on the side that allows 8,192 files to be stacked on Windows, up from the previously 2,048 frames. Now, the way my script got around it is that it batches 2,000 frames at a time at most on Windows, and on Mac you get 25,000, same with Linux, 25,000 frames on Linux as well. But now, with this experimental version, we can go up to 8,192 frames. So in my script, where you see the value 2,000 in the demo, you can actually go up to 8,100 if you're using the experimental version, and you can get that from the Siril downloads page. Now, even if you're not on the experimental version, you can go over 2,000 frames, but you're going to run into an error as soon as you hit over 2,048 frames, because that's the current limit in that stable version of Siril. Since this is an experimental version, support for this will be limited, but I'll do my best to help you. Join Discord, submit your logs, or go on GitHub, submit your logs into the issue, and I'll do my best to help you figure things out. Let's get back to the demo. This is extremely helpful if you have a lot of frames or if you don't have a lot of space on your hard drive, since the script can clean up files, and it'll actually clean up files automatically when you batch. It saves a ton of space as you go. So if you have a little bit of space, try a small batch count and let it go. I'll mention that Stacking everything in one go is mathematically much better than doing batch stacks like this, but if this is your only choice, by all means try it and see the quality differences. For the most part, you'll probably not be able to see a quality difference, but it's worth experimenting. For this test, I'm actually going to do 250, so I'll let this break down into, or I'll actually do 200, I'll let this break down into 2 different batches just to show you what it looks like. You can also do background extraction, so this will do a background extraction on each of the individual frames as it processes. If you have background gradients because of the moon or light pollution, this does help quite a bit. And from this option and going downwards, anything you do will add more processing time because it's another step to the processing. Now drizzle, true drizzle was added in Siril 1.4. You do the drizzle amount, you do the pixel fraction. Honestly, from my experience, I don't do more than drizzle 1x on one-shot color images anyway, but you can experiment with it. I know some people can do like 3, but the higher the drizzle amount, the longer it'll take to process, and it's actually exponentially longer. So 2x drizzle isn't going to be twice as long. It could be like 5 or 6 times as long. The pixel fraction is similar to the drop shrink from PixInsight, if you're familiar with that. Siril recommends having the pixel for doubling the drizzle. So if you do 2x drizzle, you do 0.5x pixel fraction, but I actually just stick with 0.9 pixels with 1x drizzle, and I get really nice results, but again, something for you to experiment with. The new option added in 2.0.6 is stack weighting. We have 3 options here: noise, number of stars, and weighted FWHM. So as it stacks, it will add weights to each of the frames based on their noise, number of stars, and FWHM. A lot of people like using noise. I prefer using weighted FWHM. This is worth experimenting with. I don't think you'll see much of a difference in these with smart telescope images, but this was a requested item from a couple of people actually, including one of my patrons. So added this in, experiment with it. You don't have to add it, but go for it. Now the filter option, this is for when it's doing the registration. You can filter frames based on roundness, background, FWHM, and star count. By default, when you check this box, it'll apply all 4 filters at once. I don't know if there's any interest in separating these out to like 4 more checkboxes. There's a lot of checkboxes, but if you don't want to apply any of these, uncheck them. That way they won't get applied. But if you do check them and you leave all of them at 100%, it's the same thing as not checking them. Just an FYI. But you can do like roundness, do like 90% of frames, and they'll leave everything else at 100%, so it'll only apply roundness of 100%. The next thing is feather. So if you have a large mosaic and you have a lot of panels, feathering may help smooth out some of the edges. Now if you click on feather, what you'll see is if you scroll down, you'll see a warning that says you enabled feather. This can cause slow processing and memory issues. If you get an error, turn it off and try again. I guess my new line didn't go through. Oh well, but anyway, so this is something that the Siril devs have said, that Siril isn't meant to feather thousands of frames. So if you get memory issues because of this, it's probably because of feather. Turn it off and try again. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do to get around any kind of memory issues caused by feather. So if you're unable to use it on your machine, then try smaller batches. That sometimes helps, but sometimes it's not worth it. Just feather and then do another background extraction later on. And when you're doing like Seestar mosaics, 20 is the minimum I'd recommend, but I usually like going to like 60 pixels, and that gives me some really nice results. But for the most part, if I'm not mosaicing, I won't feather because you don't really need it on the edges. Next, we have some post-stacking options, or actually just one option now. I removed the other one, which is enable spectrophotometric color calibration. So if you're using the S30 Pro, you do have options to, like, depending on how you imaged it. So if you did no filter, which would be the UV cut filter, you can keep it on broadband. Or if you did narrowband, like I did with the Horsehead Nebula, you click on narrowband, it applies the SPCC options in the background and then does the post-stacking steps for you, so that you don't have to do it later on. But most of the time I actually don't do this. I'll SPCC myself later on because I'll have edge artifacts that I want to crop out before I do anything. One thing I'll mention is that if you select the Celestron origin, you can't do SPCC, and that's because the origin now allows you to change cameras, and because it allows you to do that, SPCC becomes a little bit more complicated, and then I end up rebuilding the wheel or recreating the wheel of the actual SPCC tool, so there's no point in doing that. So if you have Celestron origin, sorry. The last thing here is the black frames bug. So sometimes, Siril, when you're registering and you're drizzling, this doesn't happen if you don't drizzle. If you drizzle, during the registration process, Siril will spit out a black frame or multiple black frames. It's kind of annoying, but the workaround I have is that you click on this and this script will actually scan through all of the frames after the registration phase and then exclude all of the black frames. It is a workaround, but it will make sure that the script doesn't crash and it moves forward. And normally it's not that many frames, so you don't lose that much data. So if you run this without this check and you see in the logs it says normalization error, click this and then run it again. And you may have also noticed that now this is scrollable. So previously, if the window here was too big, it would smush the text here. So now there's a scroller here so that it expands internally and you don't have to worry about smushing. But you can also still, expand the UI as you please, and it works just as well. All right, going through some of the buttons here. The help button, pretty self-explanatory. You click on this, it gives you some information about me, where to go for help, if you want to support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, and some basic FAQs here. When you click on OK, it'll output it into the logs here. And now this is a really good segue into saying that if you do need help and you need to reach out to me, the best thing you can do is click on this little button here. It says export the log. It will ask you to save a .log file. You save it and then you send it to me either on Discord, probably the easiest way, or on GitHub or somewhere where I can read the file and I can tell you exactly where things went wrong. You can also include screenshots. That's also helpful, but logs is king. Next thing we have are the save presets and load presets buttons. So I'm going to click on save presets. Once I click on save presets, it saves a .json file to my working directory. So if I open this, there you go, it's saved to presets folder, and inside I have a .json file. So if I open this, now in the JSON file, it saves all the options here so that if you need to reuse this later on, you can. I do see an error doing this here, so I'll try and fix that. And what that means is that if I close this by mistake, or if I want to come back to it later on, I go into scripts, Python scripts, pre-processing, run my script again. I'll click on load presets. Now what this will do is it'll load those presets files. It'll read from that location. So if a presets subdirectory exists and it has that JSON file, it'll automatically load it. But if it doesn't, for some reason, let's say I delete this file and then I click on load presets, it'll actually open up the Find Explorer window and I can go searching for a JSON file. So if it's not there, it's there. I did have one request to add kind of like a save as button so that you can pick and choose where to save it. I may implement that in the future, but let me know what you think. On save presets, I'll close this, open it back up. There, open it back up. Let's do load presets. There we go. All right, I have things loaded again. I'm actually going to do SPCC just to show you what that looks like. And this is going to be narrowband. And then I am going to click run and we'll let this go. Now, unlike before, this window is now responsive than before, and now the run button now becomes a cancel button. So you can actually cancel the flow, but the way this works is that it'll cancel after the current step. So it's not going to just kill it. So if I click cancel now, it won't actually do it. It might take a minute, but so something to keep in mind that if you click on cancel, it's not immediate. It has to wait for the next process to end before it does a cancel. It's a really safe way to do this. So I'm going to let this run. And in the meantime, let's take a look at what's happening here. Since I did batching, you can see that I have two batch lights directories. It splits them out into, this one was 200 frames, and the other one, this is 113 frames for a total of 313 frames. And then it'll process each of these lights one by one, and we can see them appearing in the process directory here. And since I use compression, I have fits.fz file here. So I'll let this finish and then we'll see what the end of it looks like. All right, that completed. And if I do an auto stretch, we can see exactly what that looks like. I'll turn off the link. Yep, that looks good and as expected with all of the field rotation there. And if I look at my process or my home directory here, I have a bunch of stuff here, including the different split batch lights here and here, and then I have the final batched file and then the SPCC, which is what we saw. So I'm actually going to open the batched file, which is the non-SPCC version, because as I said before, I like doing SPCC myself after doing a crop. It gives me a little bit more control, so I'll do crop, and then I can go to image processing, color calibration, spectrophotometric color calibration, and the OSC sensor in this case is going to be the IMX 585 because it's the Seestar S30 Pro and not the S30, and the OSC filter is going to be the, I'm just going to do Seestar LP because it's the same light pollution filter as the Seestar S30. Click on OK. I have my white balance summary there, and it looks good, and that's the SPCC, and I can do more stuff to it. For this script, everything is done. I can go up here. It gives you some stacking details information, including your drizzle, whether you feathered or not, just some fun information that I thought could be useful. And then as I said before, one of the last things that the script does is it turns off compression. As you can see here, it says no compression enabled after it runs the set compress command. So that's one of the last things. And yeah, thank you for sitting through a long demo. I hope it was useful and comprehensive and answered most of your questions. But if you have more questions, please ask in the comments below. Join our Discord server, ask there, ask me pretty much anywhere on social media and tag me. And if you use the script, I would love to hear from you, get your feedback. If you find any bugs, please report them. And if you want to see new features added to the script, please let me know. I just released my review of the Seestar S30 Pro, so be sure to check that out as well when you get a chance. Updates to these scripts have been a little bit slow because of my busy schedule with my day job, but my patrons on Patreon, my supporters on Buy Me a Coffee, and YouTube members have had access to this version, this beta version, for over a month now. So if you want early access to these scripts, you can join the Discord server to join the beta testing group, or you can support me like these wonderful people on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and on YouTube, and you'll get early access to beta versions in the future. You can find the links to all these platforms in the description and in the pinned comment below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, clear skies.